received the papers?
Yes, thank you. I should have said that at the outset. I have received yesterday the affidavit of Mr. Dana, and then I've also received the notice of application filed on behalf of Mr. Zuma, in which the postponement is sought.
That's correct.
With the affidavit of Mr. Tusini next there too, and the annexures.
Thank you, my Lord.
I have received that. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord. Well, on that basis then, my Lord, Your Lordship, having read the papers, I will just simply summarize the position, which is that the application is by agreement between the parties, and the relevant correspondence is attached to the application papers and was sent to Your Lordship before Your Lordship gave Your Lordship's direction. And the issue, if one can summarize it, my Lord, is as follows. The parties have, if you like, custom designed a two-stage process, today being the first stage. And today really just deals with what should happen now with today's set down. But the second stage, which will happen on the next date that I will announce now, will then be a much more extensive process where, depending on the outcome of the current assessment, Your Lordship will have noticed, I think in paragraph 4 of the letter from the medical doctors, that is postulated a medical report, a fuller medical report in due course. We're hoping that by the time we come to stage 2, that report will be at hand. And I suspect, my Lord, that depending on the content of that report, it can only have two things. One, it will give a green light to say the proceedings can continue, or it will give a red light. If it gives a green light, well, that's the end of it. If it gives any other light, so to speak, then we will have a second process at that point, at which viva voce evidence may be led of the doctor. So that's the summary, my Lord, of the position, or at least the agreed position between the parties. Then, my Lord, by way of completion, I may just add that the parties have nominated the date of the 9th of September as the next date.
Is that the agreed date?
Yes, my Lord.
Yes.
Yeah. And I do have something to say about, but no, maybe I'll say it after my learned friends have spoken. It's something that just occurred to me this morning. Maybe let me put it out there, my Lord, that it might well be that for the sake of prudence, we might put the date as 9, not just as the 9th, but as 9, 10, 11, assuming that if depending on the outcome, so that if the medical report is negative, so to speak, then we'll use only the 9th. But if it's positive, then we can have those dates provisionally anyway, because I'm quite sure that the other process that was supposed to take place is not going to take longer than that anyway. So I thought it might be, it's something I've not canvassed. The reason I was a bit reticent is because I have not canvassed it with my other colleagues. We had only agreed on the 9th, but I think it might well be prudent to put it out there.
Yes, can I just run a few things past you, please, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry, my Lord. I'm sorry. Yeah, my genius just pointed out to me that actually the 9th is a Thursday, so the 11th is a Saturday. This is the second time I'm making this kind of mistake. So, but Your Lordship gets the gist of
it's 9 and 10 then.
Yeah, 9 and 10.
May I just ask you, what is envisaged for the 9th and the 10th? And let me explain to you what I mean. Is the hearing for the 9th, let's just speak about the 9th for the moment, is that to be a hearing in court, in person, in other words, face to face, or will it be on a virtual platform again? And yes. I suppose the answer will depend. If there's to be an application for a further postponement, then what is envisaged? The state has indicated that it will then require, and that was part of my directive yesterday, that the doctor then be available to give evidence.
Yes.
Now, and also in line with the directive yesterday, that there might be evidence that will be given in rebuttal.
Yes.
Now, is the intention that if we reach that point where evidence by the doctors have to be given, that the process will take place in court face-to-face in Pietermaritzburg, with them entering the witness box and giving their evidence and being cross-examined? Or is it being contemplated that it will be a virtual hearing again? And perhaps just before you deal with that, if it is to be by way of a virtual hearing, then my concern obviously is to ensure the integrity of the process. And I would then want to know, for example, if these doctors are going to testify remotely, where they would be testifying from, and that they will be in a venue, a room, where there's some sort of oversight to ensure the integrity of the process, because obviously I wouldn't be there. And it might require, for example, somebody from the NPA and a nominee from your attorneys to be present to satisfy themselves that they are satisfied that the witnesses, or such witnesses as may testify, will not be assisted or influenced or whatever in any way. It'll depend, I suppose, on, as you say, what the medical report is going to say.
Yeah.
If the medical report, you use the words positive and negative, and I'm not quite sure necessarily what might be positive and what might be negative.
Yeah.
If the medical report should be that Mr. Zuma is, his state of health is such that he can attend court, then obviously there'll be no need for a postponement, and the matter on the 9th of September, 9th and 10th, will then take place as presently advised, and unless circumstances change, face-to-face as it would have proceeded today, but for the fact that he was hospitalized. Is my understanding there correct?
Yes, my Lord, yes. Let me start with the last part. The last part, my Lord, is what I have introduced, as I said, on my own accord, which is what I call the green light or the red light. Yeah. In other words, to have a plan B where if the medical report is positive, we don't waste more time. We simply do the plea. So that's something, as my colleagues, I'm sure they will welcome that, but you never know. But coming back to your main question.
Can I just interrupt you there? Sorry. If that is the situation and the matter can then proceed, then what do we do today? Do we postpone the matter to the 9th of September to be heard in open court? And then it only happens that if there's to be a further postponement, that might be either an open court or by way of a virtual hearing, yes. In which case, by a certain date before the 9th, you would have to indicate, or the parties would have to reach agreement as to which it is going to be. Because if it's a face-to-face hearing in Pietermaritzburg, then travel arrangements have to be put in place.
Yes. No, I agree with that, my Lord. I think that's a practical and sensible proposal. I would propose the following, my Lord, that the 9th and 10th be postponed now to open court. Obviously, the key to all this, my Lord, is the medical report. So that once the medical report comes out, one of two things will happen. Either if it says there's no longer a problem, then we continue as postponed. If it says there is a problem, then of course, again, one of two things will happen. Either the NPA will accept the report or they will seek to dispute it. If they seek to accept it, then we'll come back and have another short proceedings like this. If they on the other hand, which is more likely, seek to dispute it, then of course, then it will be the viva voce evidence and all that. What I would propose then, my lord, is that your lordship should then leave that question open. In other words, postpone, as your lordship proposes, to open court. Should any of the things I've postulated happen, we will communicate with your lordship. And to come directly to the question you posed earlier, my lord, I would assume that if the proceedings on the 9th are, as it were, postponement proceedings, with or without viva voce evidence or whatever, then I sitting here, I cannot see why they should not be conducted virtually, subject to. Yes, in terms of Section 158, your lordship will remember that we all agreed that as far as postponement proceedings are concerned, the law provides for virtual proceedings. But of course, that would be subject to your lordship's proviso. And what we do in this division, my lord, we conduct trials, civil trials, in this fashion. And what normally happens is that the parties agree a so-called protocol, which covers the issues that your lordship has spoken about. In other words, when it is our witnesses, the other party would obviously have to know where they are, and if they wish to send somebody to supervise the proceedings, simply just to sit there, then they do so, and vice versa. When the NPA calls their witnesses, we will also send a representative for the same purpose. And that's usually something. So what would then happen in this particular case, my lord, is that if and when we are going to go that route, we would probably write a joint letter to your lordship, including those protocols.
All right. Just perhaps the timing then, Mr. Mpofu. You mentioned that there'll be a medical report. Is there any indication when that report will become available so that we can fix a date prior to the 9th by which it'll be disclosed and a decision will be requested as to whether I should direct that the proceedings on the 9th be then by way of a virtual hearing or not?
Yes.
I don't want to leave it until the 8th of September.
No, of course. My lord, no. Unfortunately, the answer is no. But as I say, if your lordship looks at paragraph 4 of the Annexure FA2 to the application.
Yes.
The last sentence there, my lord, says, the medical team is actively monitoring his progress and will inform you, meaning the correctional services, soon as to the prognosis and the outcome thereof through a medical report. Now, so the first answer is that it is postulated. I can certainly, because I have been in touch with the doctor. In fact, fortuitously, when I went to consult with the accused on Sunday at the facility, the two of his doctors were fortuitously there. So I had an opportunity to speak to at least this one who has written this letter. I do not anticipate, my lord, that the medical report will take longer than a week or so to produce. But to be on the safe side, we could say about 2 weeks, because I had even said to him earlier, before your lordship indicated his non-availability, I had said to him that we might have to come to court around the 30th of August, and he did not seem to, at that stage, think that there would be a problem. So I would assume that at the very latest, by the end of the month, the medical report should be available, in which case then the NPA will then adopt a position and which we will communicate. But I'm hoping that it might even be earlier than that.
Well, shall we say then that the first accused shall provide the medical report by the 2nd of September 2021.
Yes, but no later than. I'm sure it will be earlier than that.
So by no later
than 2nd of September.
2nd of September 2021. And then in the light of that report, the NPA, the state, can consider its position. And you can then, when I say you and the state can approach me as to what form the hearing should take on the 9th of September.
Yes, madam. And if it's going to be virtual, we will include a protocol, a proposed protocol. Yes.
Yeah, we certainly, speaking for myself, I don't, in this division, I deal with matters where witnesses give evidence in open court.
Yeah.
We don't generally, unless it's a very simplistic matter, take evidence virtually. So I'll be interested to see what the protocol says, and I'll consider it. And any comments that might be made in regard thereto by the state. And then if it carries my approval, then I will issue a fresh directive in that instance.
Thank you, my lord. Speaking for myself, we would prefer it to be open court, but subject to all sorts of things and agreement with the other side. We're not going to be fastidious about if it's just a postponement application.
Well, let's maybe not try and anticipate too much into the future then. So what you're asking today then is simply an order that the matter, and I'll hear Mr. Trengrove on this now, be adjourned to the 9th and 10th of September 2021 in open court, and that the first accused is directed to provide a medical report by no later than 2 September 2021.
As court pleases, ma'am.
And then we can see how things develop from there on.
As it pleases the court.
Yes, Mr. Mpofu. Mr. Trengrove? Mr. Trengrove?
May it please you, my lord.
Yes.
I am basically in agreement with my learned friend.
Yes.
The postponement is to the 9th and 10th of September. And if I understand him correctly, there are 3 possible outcomes. The happiest outcome will be if the medical report says that Mr. Zuma is healthy and can attend the hearing, in which event we will have a hearing in court on the special plea.
Yes.
The other possibility is that the report says he's not fit to stand trial, and the state accepts that opinion, in which event there will be a very brief postponement, further postponement on the day. That can probably be by virtual hearing.
Yes, that seems fair.
The third possibility is that the report says that Mr. Zuma is not fit to stand trial, but that the state contests that opinion, in which event there will be a hearing of oral evidence. Frankly, we are inclined to suggest that that hearing should be in court and not virtual, because taking oral evidence virtually is a complicated matter. But like my learned friend, we will also not be inflexible about that position. The two suggestions that we'd like to make is this. The first is that the report, the medical report, be rendered by the end of next week. That's by the 20th of August. My learned friend intimated that there was no reason why it shouldn't be done within a week. The end of next week will give them 10 days. And let me just explain, the report is important for us not only to determine what should happen on the adjourned hearing, but for us to instruct our experts and to do our investigation to determine how to respond to the report. And let me amplify briefly. We are at the moment completely in the dark as to the justification for the postponement, and more particularly Mr. Zuma's condition. The doctor's letter doesn't identify the medical condition of which he suffers at all, and says quite perplexingly that it's been a condition that has required extensive emergency procedures which have been delayed for 18 months. So this is a crisis which has dragged on for 18 months, and we find it very hard to understand how that suddenly transforms into an inability to stand trial. So we are desperately in need of elucidation and amplification of the report, because we can make nothing of the letter as it currently stands. We would also ask you, my lord, to direct that the state may appoint a medical practitioner to examine Mr. Zuma to determine his fitness to attend court and stand trial. And let me say that we ask for such a directive in the interest of justice. We believe that you have the power to make such a directive if it's opposed. I can't imagine that it would be opposed, but if it should be opposed, you do have the power under section 37(3)(b) of the Criminal Procedure Act, which provides that any court before which criminal proceedings are pending may order that the steps, including the taking of a blood sample, be taken which such court may deem necessary in order to ascertain the state of health of any accused at such proceedings. So we submit that that is statutory authority for the examination we seek. Even if we're wrong, we submit that you have the power in the exercise of your inherent jurisdiction to regulate the proceedings before you, to direct that the state examine Mr. Zuma in order to assess his fitness to stand trial, and if needs be, to give evidence on that issue when the matter comes before you on the adjourned date. So the bottom line is the only footnotes we add to the order sought to by my learned friend is a request that the medical report be rendered by the 20th of August. And secondly, a direction that the state may appoint a medical practitioner to examine Mr. Zuma to determine his fitness to attend court and stand trial. Thank you, my lord.
Mr. Roux, this doesn't really concern you, but is there anything you wish to add?
No, we have nothing to add. Thank you, Ma'am.
Thank you. If I may return then to you, Mr. Mpofu.
Yes, my lord.
The 9th and the 10th, which is an aspect that was standing over earlier, that's now confirmed that the matter be postponed to those dates. Yes. The date for the medical report, obviously to make the debate on the 9th more meaningful, should the state not accept the medical report, they will require time to instruct an expert of their own choice, who then might or might not support what Mr. Zuma's doctor says. Do you have any problem with the date? That's the second suggestion that was added by Mr. Trengove, that the medical reports to be rendered by not later than the 20th of August.
My lord, if I may just, on the second one, yes, the first one is confirmed, my lord. Well, let me just say this. Mr. Trengove says that they are in the dark. Well, they are in the dark. It's not a coincidence that they're in the dark. We're all in the dark. He knows that the exact medical condition of the accused is a matter of confidentiality. So I don't know if he expected the doctor to go into that kind of detail in his letter. We didn't. And then he also says that he finds it hard to understand the fact that a problem that existed for 18 months is, well, I would have thought the fact that the problem existed for 18 months is exactly the reason why it is exacerbated now, especially since the incarceration of the accused. But be that as it may, we're both not doctors. We'll leave that to the doctors.
Yeah, that'll be dealt with. that'll presumably be dealt with in the medical report. So let's wait for the medical report.
Yes, my lord. All those issues will be dealt with in the medical report and by their own doctors. As far as the date is concerned, my lord, what I did, because I was muted, I took the liberty to call the doctor while Mr. Trengo was speaking.
Yes.
And he is I was asking him about this issue of the 20th. He thinks that it might be ready by then, but he can't put his head on the block. So this is what I would suggest, my lord, that we can bring the date, we can bring it somewhere in between the 20th and the previous date. Alternatively, I have no problem if your lordship fixes it for the 20th, but introduce some kind of flexibility so that if it's 1 or 2 days late, give or take, then the parties can among themselves. But there's no, if it can be produced even earlier than the 20th, as I said, my lord, it will obviously, we won't wait for the 20th. But
yeah, well, I think perhaps the prudent thing is to leave it then as the 20th, no later than the 20th. And if there's I see the 20th is a Friday. If it might take the weekend to complete, well, then, let's see what the state's attitude to that will be.
I'm sure my learned friends will, if it's going to take another 2 or 3 days, what we would certainly do as a courtesy, my lord, would be to inform your lordship before that date. But I don't think that the parties will be quibbling about a day or two either way.
Yes. I don't want to anticipate what it might say, but it seems to me from the letter that the doctors already have a pretty shrewd idea of what is involved.
Absolutely.
And the preparation of the report is unlikely to involve a lot further work on their part without trying to downplay the importance of what they're doing.
No, my lord, I agree with your lordship fully. As I say, when I spoke to him now a few minutes ago, he was saying he's on his way to meet the team. So I'm assuming that they are doing tests or whatever doctors do, and so it's something that's in progress. It's not as if they're going to start.
Yeah, there is some urgency to the matter, and I think the 20th should be a date that's fine.
That's fine, man.
And then the third paragraph that just deals with once they receive the report, to appoint a medical practitioner to examine Mr. Zuma. I take it you don't have a difficulty with that either.
Well, I don't have a difficulty, my lord. I don't know about the doctors. Again, we'll leave that to the doctors. But as I understand it, if the state has any issues with the report, the state is then entitled, because as I said, neither myself nor Mr. Trengove, unfortunately, are medical experts. So he would hardly be able to cross-examine anyone if he has not had access to his own medical team. I should think that.
Yes, no, indeed, that is so. So there's no difficulty then with an order being granted in respect of those 3 paragraphs.
If your lordship could just repeat it for me, then the first one is 9 and the 2 days.
The order will be, the first part will be, the matter is postponed to the 9th and 10th of September 2021.
Right.
Two, the medical report in respect of Mr. Zuma is to be rendered by no later than the 20th of August 2021. And 3, it is directed that the state may appoint a medical practitioner of its choice to examine Mr. Zuma to assess his ability to stand trial, and for that witness or that doctor then to be a witness if necessary to give evidence.
Yes, my lord. That's as I said. The third one is in terms of section 37. Yeah,
yes.
That should be fine.
Yes.
Yes.
Agreed
Then,
on that,
yeah.
Drinker?
With all 3, my lord.
Sorry, Mr. Bofu?
I was saying we're happy with all 3 proposed orders, my lord.
Thank you. You just frozen there for a second, and I didn't catch the last bit. Mr. Trengove, those are the 3 paragraphs. Then you happy with that?
Indeed, my lord. Thank you very much.
Yes, and orders then granted in terms of those 3 paragraphs as read out earlier.
As court pleases.
As the court pleases.
My Lord, from our side, may we ask at the date of the 9th and 10th that Mr. Durantas, the representative of Thales, be excused from a physical appearance?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Rue. That's been the state of play up to now. Yeah, I was remiss not to refer to that. He's excused until further notice.
Thank you, my Lord.
Thank you. That concludes our business then for today.
Thank you, my Lord.
Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord.
My Lord,
Yes.
okay, while we're here, just to manage our diaries, can I just confirm that if that the 9th, the 10th, we're really putting it as insurance for the first possibility. If
Yes.
all that is going to happen is the 2 medical practitioners, then for practical purposes, the matter would be for the 9th. It would be finalized on the 9th only.
Well, I suppose it depends on the extent of the differences.
And the length of the evidence, I suppose. No,
Yeah.
then let's leave it as technical.
It might require 2 days. You know, I'm hoping, with reference to a sort of a civil law analogy, that once the report from the Military Health Service is available, and the state's, the NPA's expert has looked at it and maybe prepared his own report or her own report, that there might be areas that they agree on, and that there might be limited areas on which they disagree.
Yes.
But I'm not going to anticipate that now. I think it'll be, we simply don't know.
Yes.
So let's wait for the reports and then adopt a prudent attitude to it as and when it arises, or when they become available.
I know my learned friend is always very concise and to the point, so I have confidence that we'll finish in a day.
Unfortunately, I cannot say the same about my learned friend. Thank you.
Anyhow, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating. We'll wait for the 9th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.